Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Anton here, and today I wanted to introduce to you guys Git and GitHub. Now, I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about these two things, and you're probably wondering what the heck is Git and what in the world is GitHub. Okay, now obviously it might seem very naive to you, and you might have done some Googling and you might have done some research, but the whole point of this video is to really show you guys how it really works. We're gonna do some test examples and stuff just to get you guys familiar with it, and I'm gonna explain why it's important that you use something like Git and what benefits there are. So the first thing that you need to make sure you have installed on your computer is Git. Okay, so you want to go over to git-sem.com, and what you want to do is you want to go over to this page. You want to click on download. I'm on Windows, so obviously it's going to tell me to download for Windows. If you're on Mac, you can download for Mac. If you're on Linux, you can download for Linux. It's the same process. So we're going to, obviously I already have it installed already. It's a very easy installation process. So just download the installer, save it, run the installation process. It's going to only take you like about 30 seconds. It shouldn't take you more than a minute depending on how fast your computer is. We're going to download GitHub Desktop, and we're going to go ahead and save it. Open it up. And it should open up the setup. So, okay, cool. So, welcome to GitHub Desktop. If you don't have a GitHub account, make sure you create one. It's free to join GitHub. So, just make sure you create one. And basically, GitHub itself is a hosting service for our Git repositories, right? So, basically, right now, Git is used for your local machine. You're gonna make all of your Git, you're gonna stage all of your changes, you're gonna make all your commits on your local machine. Once all that is done, you're then going to push all of your changes to the remote repository. Now, there are a bunch of different hosting services for Git repositories. GitHub is one of them. It's free for pretty much everyone. And what you're going to want to do is once you've created an account, you're going to go ahead and create a new repository. And you're just going to name it whatever you want. So I'm going to go ahead and name it sample test repository. And you have an option to give it a description. So obviously, if you're creating, a project, like a large project, or even a small one, you might want to give it a brief description. So not only you can understand what it is, but other people can look at it and they'll be like, oh, so that's what it is. You can also set the privacy of it. So you can set it to public or private. So if you set it to public, obviously anyone can see it. And if you set it to private, then only you can see it. Well, you can choose who can see it. Okay. You can also initialize a README, but you don't have to do this, but we're going to ignore that for now. Okay. So there's a bunch of stuff you could do, but we're just going to go ahead and create repository. So ignore the other stuff. Just make sure you create the name. I'll just create the repository, give it a name, and that's it. Okay, so you're going to be greeted with this page over here, and let me zoom in a little bit. It's going to say something like, this is an empty repository. And it's going to give you some instructions on how to set it up with the command line. But what we're going to do is you can also actually just set this up in desktop too. So if you have GitHub Desktop installed, you can just click this button. And it's going to ask you, open GitHub Desktop. Okay, so you're going to open it up. Okay, so obviously it's not going to do anything because we're not signed in. So let's actually sign in. Okay, so we're signed in, and now you can see it's going to ask us to clone a repository. And you can see that we can actually specify a certain URL. If we go to github.com, it's going to show us all of our repositories, all of our public and private ones, and you can actually choose which one you want to clone. So what clone means is basically you're going to take an existing repository, take all the contents that are on that repository, and you're going to kind of like download it to your desktop in a sense. Okay, so over here on github.com, we can just search for repository. So I named it sample, and I just click on that, and I just click clone, and you can specify a location on where you want to clone it. In this case, by default, it's going to clone it to the GitHub repository, but maybe I want to clone it to my desktop. I'm sorry, my documents folder. So it's going to clone it to c/users/Anson/document, and then it's going to match the name of the repository that we created on GitHub. And we're going to click clone. Okay, and there we go, it's done. And now you're looking at this and you're like, what in the world is this? Okay, so what we need to do next is we need to actually, make some changes to our repository, right? So let's actually open up a text editor. So you can actually use whatever text editor you want. You can even use Notepad, but we're gonna go ahead and use Visual Studio Code. So what I'm actually gonna do is I have my PowerShell opened up. I'm already opened up in the Documents folder, and since we cloned our repository inside the sample test repository, we're gonna go ahead and do cd sample test repository. And I'm going to go and do enter. And now if I type ls, which stands for list segment, is going to list all of the files, excluding files that begin with a dot. And you can see that our entire repository or directory is empty. But if I actually switch to bash real quick, and if I do ls-al, you're going to see that we actually have this folder called .git. And this basically, whenever you initialize a Git repository, it's going to always have this folder. And this is where it stores all of the information for your Git stages and your Git commits. Okay. Now ls-al is actually a bash command. So if you don't have bash installed, then you can't use ls-al. It's going to give you this thing over here. But there's also a tool called Git Bash that I think is also installed when you install Git. So you can actually open up Git Bash, and this will basically open up a bash shell for you, and you can type ls-al. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code. I'm going to use the code command, and this will basically open up our entire project inside the sample test repository. And this only works if you have the Visual Studio Code command set up, and if you have Visual Studio Code installed, of course. So let's go ahead and just create a simple file. Now let's just say, this is the start of our project, and we basically just want to create a simple file. Now pay attention to over here. Notice how now we can actually see something on the left-hand side of this panel. And you're going to see on this left-hand side, this is where all of your changes are going to be detected. It's going to show all of your changes. And if you click on it, it's going to say the file's empty because we didn't do anything, right? So every single time you create a new file, that's considered a change in the repository. Okay, but since we didn't actually do anything with this file, we haven't written anything in this file, let's actually write some code first. So I'm going to just create a simple function, say message, and we're going to take in a parameter. We're just going to do a simple console log message. I'm going to save that, and now look over here. Git pretty much detects all of these changes in the background, and this GitHub desktop is going to detect those changes from that Git is detecting. Right, so it's basically showing us these changes. Anyways, so yeah, you can see that we have our changes being shown over here, and if I do a couple more things, I can declare another function, add two numbers, and we're going to take in num1, num2, and we're just going to return num1 plus num2. And when I save, Git itself is going to show those changes inside our GitHub UI, our GitHub application, which is pretty cool. Alright, and you're probably wondering, well, why does this all matter? Well, remember what I said earlier, every single time you make little changes to your project, you might want to review them, and that's actually something that you should do because you never want to write so many lines of code without ever reviewing each and every single one of them. Like, even if you are like an expert, if you don't test your code periodically after every single little change that you make, you might accidentally, implement some kind of bug in your code, and it's going to be very hard to debug it because you've written so many things, you made so many changes, and you don't know which part is causing the error. Okay, so now that we can see our changes, what we can do next is we can actually stage these changes. So staging basically means that you're taking a file and you're staging it so that way you can take those changes and you can prepare it for it to be committed. Okay, and when we commit our changes, what that's doing, it's going to take all of our changes, it's going to create a snapshot. So in one commit, we can see all of the files that were newly created. We can see all of the changes in those files. All right, so let's create another file, mathfunctions.js. Okay, and let's just do function divide two numbers, and it's going to take in num1, num2, and this is going to return num1 divide num2. Okay, we can see our changes over here. All right, so cool. So if, let's say, for example, if we wanted to make a commit now, let's say we've reviewed all of our changes. Okay, let's go ahead and make a commit. Okay, so let's just say, typically what you want to do is you want to give like a very brief, a very short summary of what your commit resembles. So you want to make sure that you're naming your commits, in a way that it'll help you remember what that commit resembles. So let's say, for example, we don't really have much code, so I can just have my commit message saying something like created index.js, or wait, let me do this. Let's say created index.js, created say message and add to numbers function. And we can give it a description, but we can actually just commit to master. And now I'm going to commit this math functions.js. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say created math functions.js. Let's see. Created a function called divide two numbers. And you can give obviously a description down here, but we're just gonna commit this. Okay, so now we have all of our commits. Okay, so we have all of our committed changes. All right, and we can go over to history and we can look at all of our commits. Okay, so this is basically our snapshots, and we can see all of the files that were changed. Okay, now let's say we've made our commits already, and let's push it to GitHub right now. So that way, if we are creating an open source project that we want other people to be able to see our code, we can go ahead and just push everything. So to do that, we can click on publish this branch. Okay, so it's going to say pushing to origin. Okay, there we go. And when we refresh the page, we should see our code over here. And you're going to see that we have all of our changes. Okay, and notice how over here on GitHub, remember the GitHub itself is a hosting service for your Git repositories. Okay, and over here, this itself is the remote repository. We can look over here and we can see that we have two commits. And you're going to see on the right hand side, we have this little hash. Okay, and we have a different hash over here, and that pretty much points to our snapshot. Okay, and you can also browse the files for this commit as well. So you can see that over here created index.js, created same message and add two numbers function. So if someone else were to look at this repository and they were to look at your commit history, they would be able to understand what's going on. I mean, given if you write, readable code, but, in this example, one would be able to, if someone, knew JavaScript, they would say, hey, look, this person created a new file called index.js, and this green highlighted part means that you're adding lines of code into a file, okay? And it pretty much says function, same message, function, add two numbers, and they can pretty much tell what it does, okay? And you can also click browse files on the hosting service, and you can see that before any other commit, so up until now, up until this commit, there were only these files, okay? We only had index.js, okay? But let's go to our other commit. So let's go over here, and you can see over here that all we've done so far was we created one file, right? And it says, you can see right over here, it says showing one changed file with 3 additions. And what that means is when they say change, it's either you created or you modified a file. And we had 3 additions, which means 3 lines were added, 0 deletions, nothing was deleted, and it shows it in green, highlighted, everything was changed over here, it was added. And we can also browse the files over here. So in this second commit, in this second snapshot, we had all of these files, right? We didn't change anything in index.js, right? If you click over here, right? Hold on, let me actually go back here. Hold on, let's see. Here we go, showing one changed file. And if we go to browse files, you can see that we have all of our files in this after the second commit. Okay, nothing was changed in index.js, but we created this commit over here. Okay, now let's go ahead and show a couple more examples. Let's say if I wanted to create, let's say I wanted to, commit 2 files at the same time. Let's create a folder. Let's call this, what should I call this? Utilities. And this is going to be just some files that are going to have some helper functions. So let's just say, let's just do timers.js. So let's say we have a file that does a bunch of timers, so we can do function delay, and this is going to take in a parameter that's going to be used to delay the process from happening. Okay, so we're going to do set timeout, and after X amount of milliseconds, we're going to do a simple console.log hello world. Okay, I'm just showing simple examples. Okay, and let's say we want to create another file called let's see what do we do here. Do something.js. I'm just creating simple function examples. Do something. but you guys hopefully should get the idea. Okay, so I'm creating 2 new files, and these are pretty simple. And let's say if I want to commit both of these at the same time. So now you can see over here, it says 2 changed files. Okay, we created 2 new files in a utilities folder. And we can go ahead, and if we want to exclude, this timers file, and we just want to stage do something.js, we can just uncheck it. But if we want to stage both, we can just keep both of these things checked. And we can now write a commit message. We can say created to utilities, utility files, do something.js, timers.js. Okay, I'm just showing you a simple example, and then we'll commit to master. Okay, now that we've done that, it's going to tell you push origin, and that means push to the remote branch, right? Push one commit to origin remote. You have one local commit waiting to be pushed. You don't have to always push like immediately after every commit, right? Because that'll give you some time to look at your commits and review everything. Okay, but when you're ready, you can then push everything to origin. And if we look over here, okay, you can refresh, and you can see we now have a folder, and over here created 2 utility files. If we go to commits, it now says 3 commits, and we are on the master branch. Okay, the master branch again is the main branch. We're not going to get into branching in this tutorial, but we're on the master branch by default, and we're going to click on commits, and you're going to see in this snapshot over here, in this commit, right, it created a snapshot, and this is the hash that represents that snapshot. Okay, if we click on it, it's going to show you two changed files, and you can look at the files and you can say, hey, look, this guy, whoever made this commit, added 3 lines inside do something.js, and we can see that they just created a function, and inside utilities/timers they create a new file, added 5 lines, and you can look at it and you can write your comments if you want. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. You can write your comments, you can preview your comment. It's a pretty nice tool to use. You can also split the view as well. It's pretty cool. And yeah. Okay, so I want to finish this video with one last thing. So I want to show you guys what happens when you, let's say, want to remove a function and make a commit after. So what we're going to do is, let's say, for example, I don't need this function anymore, right? So I'm going to go ahead and delete this function, and I want to move it to mathfunctions.js. So I'm going to move that in here. Now I'm going to save and look at what GitHub Desktop is going to show. Notice how it's going to say, look, you're going to see that it's going to say this function, right, or function definition that was originally index.js. So it's going to show you the changes in index.js, and it's going to show you that we removed 4 lines of code. We removed this white space, this blank line. We removed the function that we removed the next 3 lines of code over here. Okay, and you can see that's highlighted in red, which basically means that our lines are being deleted. And now we look at mathfunctions.js, and you can see that we have green lines being highlighted, and it's showing what is being added. Okay, and that itself is pretty much showing, you're not sure why that's being shown. Let me see what the original is. Oh, okay, because it's adding the white space. Whoops. So it's adding the white space, and then it's showing this part. Okay, cool. And if we go back here, you're going to see, and obviously if I, Control Z, GitHub itself is going to automatically go back to the original changes, but we have this white space. But originally this was what the file looked like compared to the previous commit, and now notice how it disappears, right? Because it was not changed anymore. Okay, let's Control Y. What did I do here? Let's just paste this back in here. Okay, there we go. You can see here, we have our changes being shown over here. And now I can basically say, hey, look, I didn't really make much changes. All I did was I moved the add2numbers function from index.js into mathfunctions.js. So it makes sense to commit both of these, to stage both of these changes into one commit, right? Because both of these files, both of their changes corresponds to each other. It wouldn't make sense to, make one commit for index.js, like stage this one time and say removed add2numbers, and then stage mathfunctions.js again for another commit and say added function add2numbers. Instead, we can stage these 2 files together. We can write one commit. We can say moved add2numbers from index.js to mathfunctions.js, and we can commit to master, and that's gonna do everything we need to do. And we can go ahead and push origin, and after that is done, okay, we can see everything has been committed. We can refresh the page. We have 4 commits. We can go ahead and look at our commit history 17 seconds ago. And again, every single commit is going to have that hash. You can click on our commit and you can look at our changes. And pretty much everything that you see here is identical to what you see on the GitHub desktop UI. And you can see that, look, we have 4 lines that were removed from index.js, and this is what the final result looks like. In mathfunctions.js, what we did was we removed, well, I might have had something here by accident, but it's basically showing you what what's different. And we added the function add to numbers. Okay? And of course, if this is public repository, which it is, other people like you guys can see this repository, and you can go on here and you can start to make comments, you can make pull requests, you can clone the repository, work on it yourself. Guys, there's so much more that you can do with Git and GitHub that we're gonna save those tutorials for we're gonna save those features for a different video. But I just wanted to give you guys a brief introduction because I feel like Git and GitHub are 2 important tools that everyone should use, and I feel like it's definitely worth it. Hopefully you guys found this video interesting, and again, I urge you guys to give it a try. It's always great to learn something new because you never know what opportunities can open up for you. Okay, so I will see you guys in my next video. Peace.